Paul Pierce's jersey has officially been retired and hung in the rafters by the Boston Celtics. The truth was the Celtics' main star of the 21st century and helped lead Boston to their 17th championship in 2008 alongside Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen and Rajon Rondo. He is the 22nd player to have their number retired by the Celtics and has earned his right to call himself one of the greatest Celtics of all time. This video is a dedication to the truth and will cover his career from his humble beginnings to becoming one of the clutchest players the city of Boston and the NBA has ever seen. Paul Pierce was born in Oakland, California, where he would spend the majority of his childhood before moving to Inglewood, California. It was here that the young Pierce would begin to hone his craft in the gyms of Inglewood High School. However, he was cut from the basketball team in both his freshman and sophomore years and seriously considered transferring schools to get onto a basketball team. But instead, Paul would lock himself into the gym and dedicate himself to getting into shape and perfecting the art of basketball. His hard work would pay off and he would end his junior season as the star of the team, and his star role continued all throughout his senior year. Following the conclusion of his high school career, Pierce would attend Kansas University for 3 seasons. Here, he would see great success and ended his Kansas career as the 5th leading scorer and 11th for most rebounds by any player to grace the Jayhawks. But after his junior year, Pierce would finally declare for the 1998 NBA draft. Paul Pierce was projected as a top 3 to top 5 draft pick in his draft, alongside Mike Bibby, Antoine Jameson and Vince Carter. But for some reason that has never really been explained, he slipped through the draft, and the Celtics waited patiently. The Celtics management hadn't even considered Pierce as they just presumed he would be taken very early in the draft. Instead, they had their eyes set on the German shooter Dirk Nowitzki, and were reportedly doing everything they could to ensure that word wouldn't get out about how talented this 7-footer truly was. But word got to Dallas, and they took Dirk with the 9th pick, once again over Paul Pierce, and the Boston Celtics leapt at the opportunity and took Paul Pierce themselves. He was projected as an incredibly athletic small forward who could shoot, pass, handle the basketball, and defend his position as well. The city of Boston had their first future star since the era of Larry Bird ended. Paul Pierce had grown up in California, and as a huge Los Angeles Lakers fan, the thought of playing for the Celtics was initially sickening to him. But he would arrive in Boston ready to get to work anyway, thirsty to become one of the greatest to step onto an NBA court. In his rookie year, Pierce would average an amazing 16.5 points, 6.4 rebounds, 2.4 assists, 1.7 steals, and a block a game, all while shooting over 40% from the three-point line. He would be voted into the All-NBA Rookie First Team, and the city of Boston was right into the belief that he would turn their franchise around. In his sophomore campaign, Pierce would average 3 more points a game, and towards the end of the season, turned his production up to another level, leaving many thinking he would break out in his 3rd season. That is before a tragedy struck. Because on September 25th, 2000, Paul Pierce would be stabbed 11 times in a nightclub before being rushed to hospital for life-saving surgery. Pierce asked the surgeon, mid-surgery, if he was going to die that night due to loss of blood, and the doctors feared he may never walk again whilst performing the surgery. But he would in fact walk right out of the hospital just 1 week later, and was somehow only thinking about getting back to the basketball court and his teammates. And get back to the court he would. Just 6 weeks after the incident, Pierce would step back onto the Boston Celtics court for the season opener. He dropped 28 points, grabbed 6 boards, dished out 5 assists, and nabbed 2 steals as the Celtics dismantled the Detroit Pistons on their home floor. Paul would go on to start every single game in his first year back from the attack and still managed to have his breakout season. On March 3rd of this season, the Celtics would match up against the Los Angeles Lakers, their fierce rivals and Paul Pierce's childhood team. Pierce obviously had the game penciled in on his calendar as he dropped 42 points on 13 of 19 shooting as he desperately tried to will his team to the win. They would fall 5 points short, but Shaquille O'Neal would grab a reporter and proclaim to him after the game that he didn't know that Paul Pierce could play like this, before stating that Paul Pierce is the truth, and the nickname stuck forever. In this season after the stabbing incident, he would average an incredible 25.3 points, 6.4 rebounds, 3.1 assists, and 1.7 steals a game as he poured his heart and soul onto the court. Pierce had arrived as a star in the NBA, and despite not making the playoffs, the city of Boston embraced him as theirs. What city wouldn't after all that the man had been through? In the 2002 NBA season, Pierce would be an all-star for the first time in his career and begin to etch his name into the history by dominating the playoffs. Many NBA players are great during the regular season, drop huge games and throw down amazing dunks, and these players are stars. But it is in the playoffs where NBA legends are made. More eyes are on you, the games count far more, and every player is fought with incredible hustle and energy. For his first taste of the NBA playoffs, Pierce had an incredibly tough challenge. The Celtics were matched up against Allen Iverson and the Philadelphia 76ers, who had just been to the NBA Finals the year before. The two teams won their 2 home court games, and the series would come back to Boston for Game 5, the series decider. Here, Pierce would announce himself on the NBA main stage, scoring 46 points on just 25 shots, whilst nailing 8 of his 10 three-point attempts, as the Celtics annihilated the 76ers by an astounding 33 points. Pierce would then lead the Celtics to beat the Detroit Pistons in the second round before facing the New Jersey Nets in the Eastern Conference Finals. The first 2 games of the finals were split between Boston and the Nets, and then in Game 3, Boston looked hopelessly lost. Pierce had missed 12 of his first 14 shots, and the Celtics found themselves down by 19 at the end of the third quarter, facing a seemingly impossible task. Because in the history of the NBA playoffs, teams had never come back from 19 points down to start the fourth quarter. Well, Paul Pierce was a fan of doing the impossible. Whether it was playing 82 games after being stabbed 11 times or breaking NBA playoff records, he would do it. Pierce dropped 19 points on 6 of 7 shooting in the final quarter, and the Celtics went on a 41-16 run to win the game and seize control of the series once again. But it wouldn't be enough, as the Celtics would lose the next 3 games and the series. And whilst fans had salivated the possibility of another Celtics-Lakers NBA Finals, they would only have to wait a few more years for the next taste of the famed rivalry. In his next playoff appearance, Pierce was matched up against the Pacers, a team including Al Harrington. In the midst of a Paul Pierce run to close the third quarter of Game 4, Al Harrington began trash-talking Pierce, and then this happened.
And Joe DeRosa telling him to shut up. Pierce buries it right to Harrington's face.
After this shot and the previous playoff success, many thought Pierce and the Celtics would be an Eastern Conference force for the next few years at least. But they will lose in the first round the next 2 seasons and then miss the playoffs for the next 2 seasons after that. Many in Boston thought the Celtics might not be able to win it all with the truth, and that they should consider trading Paul Pierce. But Danny Ainge had other plans, and instead of trading his star, he decided to trade for 2 more. He gutted the entire roster in his moves to bring Kevin Garnett and Ray Allen to Boston, and created one of the first big threes to grace the NBA. Journalists at the time thought that the 3 would be a great team, but some wondered if they were getting old or if they would take too much time to gel. The Celtics responded to the pressure and all adjusted to their new, slightly smaller roles. Pierce himself dedicated himself to the gym and slimmed back down to his college playing weight and committed to playing defense. And the Celtics won the first 8 games of their season and looked simply incredible. After 32 games, they were 29-3 with the best defense in the league, and the shot-making of Pierce, Allen and Garnett had them looking seemingly unstoppable. Boston would go on to a 66-16 record to end their season, a 42-game improvement and the biggest single-season turnaround in the history of the NBA. Danny Ainge, Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, Doc Rivers and The Truth had put the Celtics back on their historic championship path. To begin the playoffs this season, the Celtics would struggle, as they took 7 games to beat the 8th-seeded Atlanta Hawks, and in the second round they would face the young LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers, with Pierce again facing a team who had just been to the NBA Finals. The Cavaliers and Celtics swapped blows over the first 6 games and found the series split and headed back to Boston for the decider. Up until this point, Pierce had been relatively quiet in the playoffs, taking similar amounts of shots to the regular season and continuing to play team basketball. But the moment of facing one of the young greats of the game, and with the season on the line, The Truth re-emerged to take over the game and the playoffs. He and LeBron traded blows as the King dropped 45 points and The Truth had 41 of his own. But to the victor go the spoils, and Pierce's incredible game would go into Celtics lore as he led his team to another Eastern Conference Finals. In the Eastern Conference Finals, the Celtics would dispatch with the Detroit Pistons once again and progress back to the NBA Finals to meet Kobe Bryant and the Los Angeles Lakers. Fans from 2002 would finally get their dream, Pierce versus Kobe, Boston versus LA, and the green versus the gold. Pierce would star for the Celtics and put up strong numbers in every single one of their wins, and also had 38 points in the Game 5 loss in Los Angeles. But one of the greatest comebacks in NBA Finals history occurred in Game 5. Boston were leading the series 2-1, but with a 24-point lead in the first half, the Lakers looked set to tie the series and wrestle back home court advantage. However, the big three of Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen had other ideas, and just wouldn't give up on the game, and over the second half went on a 23-3 run as Paul Pierce switched to defend Kobe Bryant and shut him down. The Celtics would close out the series in decisive fashion when they won by 39 points in Game 6, bringing the city of Boston its 17th NBA title and giving KG, Ray Allen, and the Truth the first and only NBA championship. But the big three weren't done, and in 2010, they would go on another deep playoff run to try and win another title and cement their legacy as an NBA dynasty. In the Eastern Conference semifinals that season, Pierce and the Celtics once again found themselves facing LeBron James. But this time, they found themselves down 2-1 after the first three matchups. But the big three wouldn't hang their heads, and they rattled off 3 straight wins and eliminated the Cavaliers and eventually progressed back to the NBA Finals. Here, they would face Kobe and the Lakers one last time. But the injury to Kendrick Perkins would see the Celtics lose one of their key defenders and big men. And without him, the size of Andrew Bynum and Pau Gasol would prove to be too much alongside the scoring of Kobe Bryant and the clutch shooting of Metta World Peace. The Celtics lost in 7 games, and many wondered what would have been had Perkins been healthy for the whole series. In 2012, it looked as though the big three might be able to push LeBron out of the playoffs again as they led them 3-2. But LeBron would have his career best performance in Game 6 and follow it up in Game 7 to eliminate the Celtics one last time. This would signal the end of significant success in the Boston era of Pierce's career, as they lost in the first round to the New Yorks in the next season. Then, the infamous trade of Pierce and Kevin Garnett to Brooklyn would occur, a trade which I've covered to death and gave the Celtics the assets to launch into their current form. In Paul Pierce's single season with the Nets, they lost Brook Lopez to injury, and without their star big man, they couldn't find a way to get past LeBron and the Heat in the second round of the playoffs, and were eliminated. Both KG and Pierce left the Nets that offseason, and the Brooklyn franchise has never been the same. Pierce would go on to play for the Clippers and the Wizards in the last 3 seasons of his NBA career. In the series against Atlanta for the Wizards, with the game tied, Pierce would deliver one last iconic clutch moment for his career.
Pierce with 3, Pierce with 2, Pierce fall away at the horn, it's good! Paul Pierce does it again!
Did you call bank? I call game.
And although the Wizards would end up losing that series, that moment embodied Pierce's career. Clutch as hell, with a love of the game of basketball that flowed deeper than almost anybody else. After his contract ended with the Clippers, Pierce would sign an honorary contract with the Boston Celtics, which allowed him to retire in his beloved green. And Pierce is truly one of the greatest Boston Celtics players of all time. With 15 seasons and 24,021 points in a Celtics uniform, 10 All-Star appearances, a championship, a Finals MVP, and 4 All-NBA teams, there is no doubt his jersey belongs in the rafters and that his name belongs in the Hall of Fame. Because, after all, there'll be no one else that is just like the Truth. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to leave a like and subscribe for more NBA videos in the future.